while you're doing that, I want to point out that Tracy said that she took the visual storytelling technique class. For all of you guys who haven't watched my new class, that is your first assignment. Go watch my storytelling class. It'll help. It'll probably help these Third Thursdays assignments. I hope for those of you guys who watched it, I'd like to know if it helped out. But anything to to reinforce story. And that video just launched this past week. So check it out if you haven't.
Awesome. Yeah, that's from what I'm hearing, and I haven't had a chance to check it out. I've been on, I want to say, oh, Lee, it was awesome, but I'd
I
be
appreciate
lying
the
because
honesty. I'd hate it if you just said that and you didn't actually watch it.
I'm just going to scroll through these. But yeah, I mean, like I've heard from a lot of people. In fact, some people have commented and said that your video alone was worth the subscription price.
Hey,
Watching
I'll
the video.
take that. The business class is coming up next for me. I've already started plowing away at it, so that one's hopefully going to be a December launch.
That is going to be so awesome. So these, just so you guys know, when I look through these images, they just put a smile on my face. The creativity is, I never get tired of seeing what everybody comes up with because they're all so different. And I
There was
know
a couple of these that came in after I downloaded the stuff because there's a couple of them I haven't seen before.
we just mute. Sometimes when people come in, they're unmuted, and I just want to make sure as I'm scrolling. Yeah, I know.
Is that Aaron playing Charlie Brown again, like he did last?
Wasn't that funny? So last time we heard Charlie Brown music playing. What was it? He had it on his computer, but he was sure it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Like he thought would have been muted or something, and it unmuted.
Yeah. Man, there's a couple of these I didn't see. I wish I would have seen them.
Yeah, awesome.
Really cool stuff. And it was I think it was a good one because I noticed at least I check the forums every day, and as people were posting stuff, this was I think a really hard prompt. I think it forced people to all of a sudden say, uh, what do I know about perspective? How do I show a character from the underside or from the top looking down? I think it really challenged people. And then also to get the ostrich in the shot and then to get the other animals in a shot in a pleasing composition
Right.
is a really tough call.
It's a
And
challenge.
and that's why these assignments are so good is because anybody can draw a cool illustration of Batman because Batman's just a cool character anyway, and you just draw him, doing anything, fighting crime or in an alleyway or something, it's going to be cool. Trying to put an ostrich and a bunch of other animals in illustration, that's a real project that we kind of get. You're locked into the storyline, and you can't just say, oh, I don't want to do this when I want to draw something else. You gotta try to do it, and that separates the men from the boys, as it were.
Oh yeah.
It's really hard, and sometimes you'll struggle for hundreds of sketches just to try to get it right. You'll question your profession and your career choice
Yeah.
with a prompt like this because it's so hard.
And you know what? Just having taught classes, I find that there's almost like a luck factor too. And that's why you have to do a lot of these kinds of assignments. I give a lot of assignments to the students, and for some, they resonate and they do a really good job on some of them, and on others they don't. And it's all different for all the students. And so sometimes you just can't come up with an idea that you're happy with or a composition that you're happy with. Okay, let's do a drum roll and let's look at the top half. We need to get a sound effect going on. Okay, so
Say that every month, but we never do.
here's our top half tonight. So pat yourself on the back if you're in there, and pat yourself on the back if you're not, because that means you tried, and it also means that we're fallible and we might have made a mistake, and maybe yours should have been in there. These were our impression of the ones that we felt met the criteria for the illustrating the prompt the most, and also compositionally worked the best, and also color-wise and drawing and just all the mechanics of making a good illustration. So again, if you didn't get in this time, keep trying, and that's the goal, is to shoot for getting in that top half. So I'm going to switch over to you and give you the
Okay,
screen.
let's do it. Yeah, congratulations to all you guys who got in the top half. Let me click this. And like I said, this was a hard one. So if you didn't get in, keep pushing it. It's definitely a goal to get into that top half, and then hopefully make it into the top 5 and then top 3. This was the first one that I'm going to do. Hard to pick. Hard to pick one from these. There's a lot of really good ones, but this was the first one that I wanted to do, and I want to, like I always do, walk you guys through it. Let me get rid of this so I can see my layers.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go. Okay, so this was the original illustration. This was Jonathan Baker's. Really beautiful drawing style. Definitely could see this being in a kid's book. I love the character design. The angles on it are really good, and that's what kind of drew me to this. A real nice color balance. But first off, let me make a new layer here. You know, when I critique these things, every single time, you probably heard me say it before, is at first I'm like, I don't know what to say. it's pretty good. But then I noticed a couple of things. One is it gets a little bit confusing. It took me, I saw the ostrich really quick right there, but it took me, I really had to look and to pay attention to see what was going on with the plane. And so it struck me that there's a lot of just busyness over there where our main character is, and so that was how I started, and then I start just working my way out from there. So just to give you guys an idea, so it's a really good looking piece. Let's see if we can make it a little bit better. The first thing that I did is I took out that and what looks like a filter to me. That you guys want to be real careful with that. And again, this is an aesthetic choice. It's not a technique or a tried and true principle. For me, the pattern on there looks a little too textured, like a filter. And so I just shy away from that. You guys can totally disagree with me on that. But that was the first thing that I did, is get rid of that. And the other thing is just for me to critique it.
Do you think? Can I just ask you a qualifying question? Do you think that it's too uniform? Is that the thing?
Absolutely, because I love texture. Excuse me. I love texture, but I don't like it when it looks like it was the last thing that was just laid across on a layer and set to multiply or something like that. I don't like it when it covers the entire image. I do love it when it's basically spot textures or very, like if the bed had its own texture and the chair had a different texture. Unless it's paper grain, like the subtle hills and valleys of a piece of paper, rough paper. Sometimes that's okay. If you're painting traditional watercolor, that sometimes shows anyway. But it doesn't look like a filter. And so just be careful with that. What do you think, Will? I'd love to get your
No, I
take on
tend to agree that I think you're spot on. I think that what happens is in nature, when you look at natural light, you have texture that appears in the halftone areas, but it disappears in the highlights and it disappears in the shadows. So when you see texture in the shadow areas and the highlights, it tends to make it look not natural.
Right.
And I think that's, I can't actually see this one as close. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just look at it up close. I'm gonna get the different file to look at it.
Yeah, well, I had to take it off of there anyway, just to be able to draw on top of it and not have the texture be distracting where I'm changing things. So that was my first step, is just get rid of that. Then my next step, I try to take things in real logical steps so it makes sense. Somebody's saying zoom in. Do I need to?
Yeah, we want to. That's why I'm gonna. Yeah, and I'm gonna
I can't
hold.
get my whole image on there.
You know what? I'm gonna agree with you now that I see it large. You've got the texture running through every aspect of it, and it does look like almost like we're looking at it through a screen door or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Here's what it looked like. Can you guys all see that if I zoom in?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just really, it's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna back up.
Boy, we're making a big deal out of this texture.
Yeah, let's move forward. Okay, so like I said, it got a little bit busy over here. So I try to take things in logical steps and not just try to fix little things all at once. I try to think of big things first. And so if you guys are watching and this is not your image, this is what you need to take away from this: big steps first. And so the first thing I'm going to do is isolate my character, because I know my character is busy, but I don't know how to solve it yet. So I'm going to get rid of my character and see what I'm left with. And so that's the first step, is start to simplify the composition. A lot of times when people paint a room or draw a room, they just randomly put stuff in there that goes with a room, props like chairs and pictures and, all that stuff is great, bookcase. But it's got to serve the composition first and the story first, and then your props are secondary. So that was my next step, is to take out a little bit more props to see if I can have an area of simple. You always want simple balanced with complex, and so that's my first step. And I can obviously add this stuff back in as I draw, but I need a good place for my character to be. So almost always when I'm doing critiques for students, the first step is either cropping or simplifying. And that's what I think you guys should do. So once I got rid of the ostrich and the pictures and stuff up here, I noticed that it's kind of night, I guess. The overall color balance looks like it's night, but some of the shadows look kind of day. I don't know. I just pictured this as probably being a night scene, and this started to draw a lot of attention. This window over there. So I thought I would just make that a darker night sky. I don't think it's in a good color balance right now, but I'm just like doing just big block in and trying to, like I said, simplify it and just solve each step one at a time. Okay, so now that I've got a simple area, I realize that maybe the ostrich is going to pop better here than down here because there's all these lines and all this stuff going on down here. And I got this nice simple area up here. And so that I change my composition and try to lean into that idea a little bit, move everything down. If you notice, before I do that, as I stay up here, this whole area, now that I've taken the ostrich out of it, doesn't really serve much of a purpose. So that was another reason for lowering my composition.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now I need to give out.
The angle of that room was really interesting, but
that's awesome.
But almost I just wonder, I don't know if you felt this way at all, that it was almost too interesting.
Well, I think, like I said, I think a lot of things started to dwarf the story,
mm-hmm.
and so I think it's a great looking shot. I just think it's 3-point perspective is hard to maintain your story and draw it, and I think Jonathan did a great job on the drawing here because it is really simple, and I think he kind of nailed it. But I want to make every decision for my character and for the storytelling, not necessarily for the drawing of the whole room. And so that's kind of why I lower it down. So now I need my ostrich, and look how well he shows up just by turning that off and on. I realize now he's in a good spot where he's going to be seen. If I scroll through the layers real quick, see how just right when that pops up, you got to do this. Your eye kind of bounces around real quick and then goes down to the ostrich. If I go back up, see how clear that is? It's simple. And see, so then you can start adding complexity. Once you get the simple, then you can start figuring out where the complexity goes without hindering that main idea. Mm-hmm. So now I need to give him something to hang to, and I wanted to make that a little bit more clear, and I can add some of these other things. I felt like it was a little bit blank down here once I got rid of the ostrich down there, so I just put kind of an elephant kind of shape looking through. There's the little clouds and sun. Like that idea. Maybe, I mean, the perspective doesn't really make a ton of sense on this thing, but I don't know, it's kids' books, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. I'm the worst person to ask about perspective because I disregard it all the time. I disregard everything in favor of composition. I lean towards design first, and then I just try to make the perspective not look bad,
right,
versus trying to nail the perspective. So now I've got a really nice perspective, and like I always say every time we do one of these, if something looks good as a postage stamp, it'll look good as a poster. Mm-hmm. So look how far out we can get, and I still have a real clear silhouette read on my ostrich and my plane. So thumbs up if you're using that kind of criteria for your design selections. I'm still confused that overall the palettes, I love the color, but the palette's a little murky. Again, when I go out here, it overall has a dark feeling. So I thought I would go ahead and turn on the light a little bit and try to give it a little bit of illumination. I'm going to back off of that just a little. There we go. Just to start making sense, I can start to define my characters a little bit more. I didn't put too much highlighting on them, but you can see on the right side of the characters, the right side of the bookcase. I mean, I didn't try to render or anything, but just enough to give a real nice, warm, cool relationship, which I think works really well. The next thing I want to, if there is this light on, and I want to highlight my ostrich, I'll just add a couple little spots. Again, a lot of times I'll do that and then I'll back off of it a little bit and lower my opacity some. Okay, so now I've got a composition that I like. Again, I keep backing up to check things, and I like the way that looks. I like the color balance. I like that subtle warm-cool relationship. I like my overall design. The next thing is to look specifically at the ostrich. He's kind of shoehorned in up there. He should look a little bit more. Again, if you watch the storytelling video, I talk about keywords a lot. He should look, I think, awkward in this. The plane's not made for him. He's kind of fitting into it, and so I don't want to go too nuts, but I want to give him. I'm gonna do a little dance. But I can change him just to make him look. He's going to be excited. I mean, you got to think of how is he going to feel up there? And right now, the keyword that I use for this pose is he looks a little bored. He doesn't look as excited as he possibly could. So there's a million different poses you can do. I just picked one. You want to watch out for arms and legs doing the same thing. So that's just a good rule of thumb for almost any pose, even sad poses or somber poses.
So you have one foot coming towards us and one foot going away.
Yeah, just to vary it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then last but not least, I thought it might be nice if he's going fast, if those things spin a lot, just add like a little motion blur at the top. You want to be subtle with that, but just to make him look like he's spinning around. So that's what I did. And then last but not least, I meant to pull it up. I don't know if I have it here. Oh, this is everybody's. Here, I'll just go through the layers real quick. So I like to go, once I've done the changes, I like to go back through and see if did I make it worse? Did I make it better? Because it's not all the changes you do might not help it. And so that's the last step that I do, is to always just toggle back and forth between them. And I think it's definitely a clearer read. I don't know. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I agree. I think that your main character works better more at eye level, because you're getting to really look at him. Whereas when we're looking down on everything, and so that's what I think sets your ostrich apart now, is that we're looking directly at him, but we're not looking directly at anybody else. We're looking down on everybody else. Yeah. And I think that where you really have to oversimplify areas of your focal point. So putting them against, even though I love the clouds, that who was it that did this one again?
This was Jonathan.
John, right? Yeah, and the clouds were really fun. They were just little things, little touches. That sometimes when you move things around you lose, but overall, and I really agree with the lighting that you did. I think that when given a choice, this is a warm, inviting picture, so I think it should have warm colors. And whereas the colors that he had were all cold, other than the ostrich itself, I think I think illuminating that and bringing some warmth into it really makes it feel more happy, more fun, more alive, instead of cold and dead. It's definitely good to use cold and dead colors in children's books, but you need to have a reason to use those.
Right, it's got to support the story and support the overall feeling.
Yeah.
Somebody had a question real quick. Great simplification, but what about Will's 20 pieces of flair in the room to keep the eye interested? That's a great question.
Wasn't that your 20 pieces of flair?
I don't have 20 pieces of flair.
Those weren't mine. I don't know where that 20
it wasn't
pieces.
Mine. I would take the stuff that I removed back here, and then you can start playing with that. For example, there's little spots of blank. I could add pictures. But you just don't want to mess with this silhouette. Everywhere else, I might think about adding things that go off the frame.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's a poster or something over here.
Yeah, you could definitely clutter up the non-focal point areas.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things you could do. You could add trim to the door.
Yeah.
You could add stuff inside this box that's coming up. I don't know.
In fact, I give an assignment for my imagination and visual literacy class where they have to put 50 items, 50 individual objects in the illustration. So maybe that's what you're talking about, Katrina, where you have to put all that extra stuff in there. But that's a device.
It's all secondary.
It's used it's used to separate the designers from the people who haven't really started to understand how to value, group, and simplify and silhouette. And so you can have 100 different objects in a room as long as they're organized right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much space down here to play with. I mean, this chair is still empty. I mean, there's no design work right here. Something could be sitting on the windowsill. Maybe there's books over here. I mean, we could add, like Will said, 100 things over here.
But at the end of the day, your focal point needs to remain uncluttered.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome.
Off to you.
I will
Very
switch.
nice work, John. That was a really beautiful piece.
All right. Tell me when you see my screen there.
Mary had a statement that the onlookers' expressions could be more excited. I agree that that would be the next step is to really start paying attention to what the different animals are doing, which is a nice segue to Will's piece right here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you can see it right now.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So this one is amazing in that they didn't show the main character, and yet it still worked. Um, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Like that's really gutsy to do. You're not seeing the ostrich. The ostrich is gone. So I came up with some things. I have awesome concept because I just think that it's a great idea. It's risky, but at the same time, if you pull off the risk, you win even more. So basically, I came up with three things. We could probably find some more, but I try not to overload when I do a critique because I want to make sure that you understand what I think are the most important things. The first one being texture, and this is something that I really feel strongly about. It's not 100% because there are definitely illustrators who do what you're doing and are successful. But one of the things that I shy away from or try to encourage people not to do is to use the really super stock tools of Photoshop. And so where you have this really nice airbrush sky, the thing is, and part of the reason I'm giving this advice is because I feel like people that are trying to break into the business of children's books are your job is to separate yourself from the masses. And with everyone having access to the gradient tool or to the airbrush tool, um, it's it's so common that it's one strike against you because you're not taking that chance of or that time to really set yourself up by having a different texture, something that's unique to you, your own way of applying paint. And so I would encourage you, and the same with the animals, there's these flat colors on there and airbrush gradients like on the giraffe there. Um, that I think you can probably push it in that direction. So for as far as innovation, I would give this low marks, but as far as concept and as far as drawing, it gets high marks. So there's some really, really good things going on, but I would just encourage you to go further with the texture. Now, how do you feel about that, Lee? I want to.
I agree. I think it depends on where this is going to go, in my opinion. The drawing is just so spot on. The concepts are so good. I mean, the characters are wonderfully
Hmm.
designed. But the art technique, it reminds me more of a Sunday comic
Hmm.
than a children's book. And I think with the current trends in children's book illustration and children's book publishing, I think there'd be a little pushback to the style because it feels a little commercial.
Right.
Uh,
However, the person who did this, which is Nader's Calderon, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned your name. Um, Maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe that's what he
right.
wants to do. And so this might be, if you want to fit in the comic book or the comic area, this might be perfect. So we're both children's book illustrators, and that's kind of where we're coming from on the critique. But that's just something to think about.
Is he here? Can we ask where this was kind of
Let me
where
see.
he envisions this going?
I don't see him, so he'll probably watch the video. But
Be curious because it does fit that Sunday comic perfectly.
it does.
But if he's going for the children's book, I think your point is totally valid. And maybe try a couple of styles. I mean, he's already got the drawing, so why not? You can play
Yeah.
with it.
So I do feel strongly about this next one though, and that's value. And if you look at the thumbnail, and that's why I have the thumbnail up here. If you look at the thumbnail, which animal do you see the easiest? And you guys can all answer that on your own. But I would suggest that you probably can see the giraffe the easiest. Yeah, and so we're getting giraffe. Um,
Yeah.
why not the elephant? The elephant's big. Um, and can you tell more about can you see the giraffe easier than the elephant? Yeah, so that would be my next thing is we've got to separate values because really, especially on this on the rhinoceros, when we look at that, really the only thing separating that rhinoceros is the line. and that becomes a style inconsistency. So if let me just get another layer here, and if I paint out this line right here and this shadow right there, we start to just really lose that rhinoceros altogether. And then somebody might say, well, then don't paint out the line, right? But what I would counter you with, if you're going to be that snarky to me, I'm going to be snarky back and say that you're using value to separate this shape up here on this giraffe, and you're using value to separate the boar. And then all of a sudden, when you get to the rhinoceros, you're not. You're just using the line. And I would say that's a style inconsistency. So to be consistent, what I would do is I would darken, and that moves us into the third piece of the critique, which would be utilizing the space at the same time. So not only would I make the elephant bigger, but I would also, and I'm getting a text right there. I need to learn to mute my phone before I enter.
So popular.
So
can you zoom out so we can see kind of how that gray sits on that sky when it gets smaller?
Yeah. So
yeah, see that really pops.
Yeah, see the difference there? Let me zoom in just a little more.
Yeah, so the easy way to remember this, you guys, when you're thinking about this and you're making your image and your value studies and things, is easy. Light against dark or dark against light.
Yep.
And you've got to if you make that a conscious decision while you're designing, everything falls into place easy, and this never becomes a problem or an issue in an image.
And you can go in and let's see, this is my other layer. And, one thing I didn't do is I didn't pop any highlights back. You can still have your highlights. We're not taking those away. And you can still have little highlights along some of these areas. I don't know how he would put those in there, but you can still have that, but you just need to have that value there.
If there's anybody struggling with value, and it's a tough one, I'd say about 50% of the people are great with value, 50% of the people are great with drawing, and sometimes those don't overlap. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times the people who are really good at drawing struggle with the value. If that describes you, one exercise that I give my students that really kind of turns on the light bulb for how value works is I make them do their value studies with construction paper.
That's a great idea.
And they get away from the digital tools entirely. They get 5 values of construction paper, and that's all they get, and they have to compose it with those. They just glue it down, and we just look, we look at the rough sketch next to the value study, so it can be rough, but man, they nail it, and all of a sudden they never struggle with it again.
Yeah.
So sometimes the tools get in the way, the digital tools.
Yeah, and you could just see right here, I'm just going to throw a little bit of value on there, and we'll get some of the same stuff here. And really, that's all you need is just a little bit to pop that out, right?
The good thing is the storytelling is so good and the concept is so good. All this is just art stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy.
Yep. And we could dial that back a little bit. It doesn't even need to be that dark. It could be just like that. The other things, when I talk about space, there's little tangent areas like the boar hitting on the giraffe's foot right there. In our creative composition class, we go through this a lot. You've got, this foot right here almost touching, and I'll get rid of my elephant, you've got right there, and these little uncomfortable spaces, that's something that you definitely need to work with as you create these animals. It's like a puzzle that you need to fit together. So what you've got going on here is, and I won't take a whole lot more time on this one, but this is just so important. I feel like you've got this arc right here, and then you've got this arc right here, and they really need to be married up. So if you have that one, just go ahead and pull that elephant back and put his trunk right where it was, and then now you've got that negative space in there is so important for legibility. And also, what happens when you have tangents? It confuses the characters. It confuses what's in front of what. So when you look down here and you see feet here and you see feet there, and you know that these feet are in front, and you know these feet are in back, but when you get right here, it brings that it confuses what's in front of what, right? So You either want to take that head and really go behind the elephant and really do a nice overlap, or you want to separate them, you know, like I was
Yeah.
talking about. Okay, great piece, and I'm going to kick it back to you there, Lee.
Great points. I mean, I think if he makes those changes, that is a definite portfolio piece. I just love it. I did. If you guys have seen, like I said, the visual storytelling video, I actually used that video in the, or I used that image in the video because I thought it was so clever.
Which one?
Really, the one you were just critiquing. It's in my video.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I reward the forum, my forum people. Okay, so this is the next one. I don't know if this is this Joshua or Josh? Is he on here?
He has Joshua written down, so
Joshua. I'm gonna go
let me
with
see.
Joshua then. That's what he saved it as.
Yeah, he's here. You wanna? We're gonna unmute you, Joshua, and if you don't want to be unmuted, I don't think he has a mic plugged in.
Doesn't matter.
So if you want to unmute,
He can chat.
if you want to unmute
there
yourself
he is.
and chat with us, you can. Oh, he doesn't have a mic. Okay.
All right, so I was really drawn to this piece. I think compositionally, it's absolutely just on the money. Really, really pretty. It's striking as I just how I view all these once we download them. I go through them really quick and I pay attention to that first moment where I notice something and if it's going to stop me, because that's what an art director is going to do. And that's what I'm looking for, is that moment that's going to stop me. And a lot of times, really clean silhouettes will stop me. And really good drawing will stop me. And I think this piece has all of that. It's really, really great.
Can you zoom in just a little bit so we can see it larger first?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. This one actually fits on my screen, so I can keep it this big the whole time.
All right, thanks.
Excuse me. So I love the drawing. I love the concept. It's really good. And so that's why I was drawn to this. So without further ado, I'll go through. All right, the first thing that I wanted to do, again, it's like I did last time, is always simplifying the first thing. I noticed when I was looking at his piece, get a different color up here, that, again, the ostrich, the concept of the ostrich is they can't believe it. So obviously it's an aircraft that they don't know is going to work, and they're surprised to see him up there. And if you look at his balance, it's really vertical. Even this line, it's a little bit off of that. Perfect horizontal, but what that does is it gives you stability. Look how even all this stuff is. These are going at the same angle, so we got a strong vertical, we have a strong horizontal, and then everything's pretty stable on him. And so that was where I started again, is just simplifying that and try to lean into the story just a little bit. And so I got rid of him first just to see how the rest of the composition was setting up and working. And it's working really good. So notice how when I can just tilt him off axis, he's going to start to feel a little bit squirrelier. You can see a couple of other changes I made too. Let me take this layer up here. I may have done it too extreme, but I tried to make this wing going down, this one going in a different direction. So maybe it would feel to the viewer like there's a struggle as he's flying, like maybe it's not going to work as well as he thought it would. And I just wanted to give him that sense of uncertainty and being off balance a little bit. It's a subtle shift from that, but it makes a big difference to the viewer. The next thing is the details on him. If I assume just by the parts that it's made in a garage, like one of those type things. And so I started to think about how does this thing sound? And this is a great storytelling trick for you guys when you're illustrating for detail, is what does something sound like? I mean, I picture this thing squeaking. I picture bolts popping off of it. I picture him having made it out of a bunch of found materials even. And so I didn't actually change the wings too much, but that would be my advice. And look at what we have here is just a real stable shape, a rectangle. I mean, solid as it could be. I would probably, if I was going to critique this a little bit longer, start to vary that shape a little bit. But I wanted to add randomness with all these little bits and add interest to the silhouette out here. So the next change, I need to back out a little bit so you guys can see the composition.
I'm 100% with you so far.
All right, good.
These hums are hums of agreement.
Okay.
You'll know if I disagree.
You'll go, Okay, so the next thing that I know, I always, again, as I'm making these changes, I go back to the original and compare and see if I'm making things better or worse. One thing, going back to what Will was saying about the tangents and stuff, this isn't quite a tangent sitting on the edge, but it's close enough to feel really awkward to me. Do you agree with that, Will?
Yeah.
That wing's just a little too close to the edge. So I started looking at that, and then once I came back to the original after I'd made those changes, the type started being really clunky. Sitting on the illustration, it looks like that artist didn't plan for the type
Hmm.
and had to throw it in on there. I mean, once you add type, that do not consider the type words. Consider the type part of the illustration. It's got just as much design weight as anything does. So I really, really want to strongly encourage you guys to think of type as a design element and not
I'm
not
so
just one
glad you
function.
did that because I was thinking about that for this one.
So here's how I worked it up. Just
Oh,
because, again,
baby.
I want to play with him feeling out of control. And if the type is something I can work with, then I'm going to use it. Because everything, I mean, it's going to speak to your viewer. And by the way, our audience, when we're showing portfolios, those people are graphic designers and they are art directors and they're around type all the time. And so if you haven't taken a type class, it would be well worth your time to go to at least a community college and take a type class. Maybe at SVS we could get a
You know
graphic
what?
designer to do a type class.
I have a guy who is probably going to do a book design uh, type. Well, I don't know what we're going to call it, but he is a high level guy, very very high profile, and I can't announce it because I don't. It's not a for sure thing yet, but we're talking. So
Cool.
it's what
So
we
somebody
need.
did,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, type is a huge deal. Somebody said, what if we made him bigger in the frame? I think that's a great idea. I'll go ahead and
Hmm.
do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Mary
like that.
says I was going to try to get that in there. She says, what if he was bigger?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so the next thing comes. So I'm kind of done with this side. By the way, I did want to get rid of the visual weight that some of this stuff had back here. If I go back to my paint layer, you see how harsh that is? Going back to what Will was talking about with value. Now we have a real dark shape against a real bright background, and that's going to start to draw attention. So I want to calm that down a little bit and see how those birds just fit into the background like that.
Hmm.
And so you want to
So
just
they're
lose that.
flavoring, right? So
Yeah.
it's like if you put too many spices in your stew and you were just way too powerful on the garlic or way too powerful on the cayenne or something, and that's what you're doing. You're toning that down a little bit.
Yep, yep. Think of things as first. I love the spice analogy. Think of things as a first read, which is going to be our main characters, second read, and even third reads, and then use your value and your color and all that stuff to control that. So now I realize that we've got some bit players in this scene. He's going to be our star, and he's against a white stark background, so that's great. But these are bit players, and we want to up their um, role in this. So I just added a little bit of light in there. Again, you don't have to go as warm as I do here, but just enough to start to highlight them just a little bit if I turn it off and on. And then I added just a little bit of cast shadow behind them just to add a little bit more interest here. And if I was going to do this I did this quick, but if I was doing it longer, I'd probably back off of that just a little bit. But if I turn these two layers off, see how they just get lost in there?
Mm.
So just a little bit of visual interest.
Hmm.
And again, doing what I did with the last one, go back, check it against the
How
original.
did you actually do that digitally? Did you use like a Dodge or something or like
Oh, for the lighting,
yeah.
how I always do that is I go on to just set your a new layer and then set it to vivid light.
Mm.
And vivid light is fantastic. The key to using vivid light for all you guys who are digital, let me go ahead and do this, is to use an extremely saturated color for it, and then you have to be very careful with it. But you can make these beautiful glows. Like I could just make all this whole area kind of glow.
Or you could overcook it.
You could definitely overcook it, like this.
Yeah.
But it's a fun one. Like if you're ever doing illustrations for like World of Warcraft, everything they have is like glowing
Yeah.
little thing, runes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's a great trick. The vivid light works really good. And then I put always an opaque layer on top of that and just draw straight on top of that.
So Mary says that Josh did a great job, and he really did. And I have to add that it really is easy for us to come in and give a critique to a painting that's already really working out. Um, So props
It's
to you.
hard. It's
Props
hard.
on
These
that.
guys are. This is a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Awesome. You ready for me to take over there?
Yeah, grab it.
All right. So I've got, and I hope I pronounce your name right. Is it Shinji? And she's here. Um, and I'm gonna, if you want to unmute yourself, or I just unmuted you. Do you want to say hi, Shinji? Is it Shinji?
Oh, it's a guy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, he doesn't have a mic set up. Okay. Um, that shows you how much I know about names and different ethnicities and stuff. Okay, so great job on this one, and I did come up with a few things. So let's just talk about them. I was going to talk about exit lines first, but I think I'm going to talk about the drawing through first. So just a real simple little thing, and I just noticed this, but if we carry this, let me get a different color here. If we carry this line through right here, and then we come over here, and it probably hooks in there, what's going to happen with this is it's going to miss there, right? And so if you're working on a tight crop like that, just tell yourself you've always got to draw through and you've got to flesh out your plane because that matters. That line really probably should be more in there. And those things really matter. And what happens there is that creates a tangent on this. So we might want to actually add space onto the illustration. And if we add there, we might have to add down here too. But that's just kind of first
Yeah,
observation there.
good catch.
Um, the second one I want to talk about is let's go ahead and talk about the I'm doing these out of order, but let's talk about the head position of your different characters. So this one right here is great. This one right here is absolutely great. This position of this airplane, great. Position of all the airplanes is great. But when we get to the main character right here, uh, with that straight on view where you're really kind of dealing with that, that's really hard to make it look good. And I think that typically objects look better in 3/4, so that's why I drew this crappy one right down here. Um, we typically want to see objects in a 3/4 view, you know. Um,
It gives you so much more opportunity to draw
yeah,
in the three-quarter view.
it really does. And what happens when we get what happens when we get symmetrical like that is it actually becomes boring too, you know. Um, and it really doesn't give us an idea of that character. It'd be kind of like, and I realize that people on the video can't see what I'm going to do, but it would be the equivalent of trying to draw my hand when it's like that. And it's just really tough. You know, I'm pointing it right directly at the camera, fingers directly at the camera. It's easier to draw a hand like this or like this or like this, you know. And so that's kind of what we want to do is give our, you know, this character right here, we can just see what's happening. It allows us to know that the head comes down to the snout and then the snout comes out and then the snout goes back down. It just gives us so much more information to work with there. Oops, I'm back on the wrong layer again.
I hate it when I do
Always on the wrong layer. That's the story of my life.
that.
Um, maybe I'll lock it down.
There's a T-shirt in that somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch and I'm going to go back to this one here. And the last one for exit lines. And Lee, you might disagree with me on this. So this could be my own thing or it could be something you agree with. And by all means, if you disagree, I want you to. I'm daring you to because then I'm going to disagree. No, no, it's good. It's really good. But I have this feeling that that the image edge should not have much to do with what's going on in the picture. So when you take something out through a corner here, and then this is basically airplane is basically flying out through the corner, what it does is it really draws attention to the corners of your picture, and what that does is instead of having a composition that brings you through your composition and around and around again, an eye movement like this, then what you have is things are taking you out of the picture. So this guy's going out. Now, can you have things exiting? Absolutely. Um, what do you think about that, Lee?
I think it's a good call. How would you change it here?
So what
I just
I think he's cropped in just a little too much. I think what I would do on this one is let's just finish out these shapes and then see what we would do. Now this wing here is gonna overlap, and then this fuselage right here is gonna probably be out here somewhere, and there might be a dealio on that and doohickey, and that's fixed there, and these guys are just inside, and you got the type is in a nice place and everything. So then, what if we crop it in a different place? Like, what if we allow this guy to be in, and maybe we bring this guy. Maybe that guy's okay coming out there. Um, I'm suffering from allergies still, so that's why I keep messing with my nose. Sorry. Um, but
I like that guy being full frame on the lower left. I think that looks nice.
yeah, I think this one is gonna. If you have one thing going out, maybe not have the other thing going out. Um, and maybe the one um, this big one in the foreground isn't as big a deal. One thing that I try to do is this. This is a little thing that I try to do. If you imagine, and we talk about this in our creative composition class too, that if you divide your image into thirds, right, and you say, okay, well then by dividing into thirds, there's actually 4 perfect places for focal points. Now gets really formulaic, and if everybody followed this every single time, we probably would get some boring images, even though they always work. But these are basically your ideal places. The places you don't want to put a focal point is right in the middle or on the edge of the picture or in the corner, something like that, right? So now that affects where your exit lines are too. So one of the things that you want to do is vary your exit lines so that you're not emphasizing the corner. Emphasizing the corner would be if you have an image, if you have something in your picture that is going out of the picture like this, and that way you're hitting the same spot on both. Why can't I draw dark? I think I diminished. Oh, that's
Oh,
because I didn't.
you're on a low opacity layer.
Low opacity, yeah. See, so this right here is equal distance from the corner. So we've got this equal distance going here and equal distance going here. That's something I try to avoid because what that does is it emphasizes this corner. It makes the corner more than it needs to be. So what do you do instead? Um, do something like my layers are a mess because I'm trying to work really fast. If you're exiting right here, then exit over here. So you're kind of doing that already. You're exiting in the middle, and then you're exiting way over here. And I actually like that. These distances are different. I think what you really want to avoid is the same. You don't want to have an object that exits here and here, and then it tends to compartmentalize your image into this weird. Is there
Kind of
two?
makes a box. It makes
Yeah,
like
are
an
there two
entire box.
images that we're looking at? Is there an illustration here and an illustration here or something? You really want to vary that. So just keep that in mind that whenever you look for exit lines of your image, just come in and then go out in a different spot, and it will tend to not emphasize the corner, but really make it look like there's something bigger going out. So like that, something like that works better. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, really good stuff.
So that's my thing. And beautiful drawing, beautiful rendering style. This is really high level stuff. I mean, this is super professional. And I think that with those little tweaks, just keeping in mind and working on fixing some of those things, you'll be on your way for sure if you're not already.
Mary was saying she loves the ostrich's plane. I want to second that. That is such a cool looking
It's a
plane.
creative idea. The drum barrel. Yeah. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, really amazing.
Okay, coming back at you.
Okay. All right. So one thing I wanted to add to what Will was saying just a second ago. Let me just make a new. Something I started using a lot more lately is, if I can remember how to zoom in. I got a new. It's a good problem to have. I've got this new Cintiq, and I'm trying to remember it. Sorry for all my technology problems. It's a good problem to have. I'm so happy with it. Let me switch colors here. One thing, if you guys have been using rule of thirds and you want to try something different, one thing that I started using, if you have a longer or a wider composition or a more vertical composition, one thing I'll do is, let's see if I can go across here. I make a line across, and then I make basically a 90-degree line down, a 90-degree line, or excuse me, yeah. So it basically makes a right angle, right? And you can do the same thing with another diagonal line here. So it gives you the same four, except it pushes the points out just a little bit. Oops, hit my cord. I'm a mess. So if I was doing the Titanic setting sail, and it's on the the wide open sea, maybe I put it here instead. Rule of thirds would put it over in this direction. But I love this spot, and I started looking at old masters, and a lot of them it tracks back to this exact subject matter placement. So give it a whirl if you haven't tried it. It's fantastic, and it just moves the points out a little bit more. The only time it doesn't work is if it's a square, because as you go towards a square, it'll push that shape towards the center. So just be careful there. So it's kind of a cool little thing to try out. This one is Sarah Perkins. This is a gorgeous looking illustration. Again, as I'm thumbing through the different entries, I just pay attention to what I pay attention to, if that makes sense. And I just love it. It feels so professional, kind of like the last one that Will was just doing. So professional. Definitely could see this being published. Really, really pretty. So congratulations on that. It's a great looking piece. So one of the things that I noticed right when I look at it is, aside from it being just so beautifully drawn, is I go back to what the composition starts to tell me. And right now we have got a very wide horizontal, so that's going to start to take energy a little bit. That's a really dominant line. It's in a nice spot. I mean, it's using those rule of thirds like we were just talking about, but it's so horizontal. Again, we want this thing to feel like there's energy here, and all the animals are just, if you go through their gestures, I mean, there's slight gestures within them running, but they're all just excuse me, got a little cold. They're all just going horizontally, and even the bird is horizontal. So that's what I wanted to solve first. So, and the other thing that I noticed, like Will was saying with that last piece too, is it starts to feel just a little bit crowded, almost like if he's going to fly away, I want to kind of give him the space to fly. So the first thing I do is I just extend the canvas, and I just added that blue background. So I'm not going to try to mimic that woodcut, which I think is so pretty. So open him up, give him some more canvas, and then I get rid of my subject matter again first, because it's so helpful to do that. I only started doing that in the last year for some reason. I do a composition, I take out the subject matter, and then I put them back in, and it just gives you a fresh chance to play around with angles and stuff. So now I just kicked him up into the air and angled him a little bit more, so the shadow makes sense. It feels like he's taken off, and just adds so much energy. Watch as I go back and whoa, there's nothing there. Watch I go back and forth between those two. It just feels like he's popping up in the air, and it gives you a more satisfying moment as a viewer, because he really is lifting off. When I go back to look at how it originally was, he's just barely getting up, and it doesn't feel like he might even lift off. Like those early flight attempts.
In your version, illustrates the text a little bit better too. I mean, hers is definitely, I think hers is the scene right before the actual prompt where it says,
right,
for the first time, the ostrich was actually flying. And and it's so dynamic whenever you put something up in the air, like it's flying or bouncing.
Yeah, such an easy way to make something interesting, that's for
It
sure.
really is.
I attached the shadow to him so I can move and play. Oh, what did I do?
Oh no.
Oh, there we go. I'm good. I'm doing this without a keyboard. I'm using my little touch, this Cintiq thing that came with the Cintiq. So I feel like I'm playing pianos with boxing gloves.
Hey, what about dust flying off? Mary's has a good idea for some.
Hold on, we're getting
Oh.
there. How about that? Some dust on the animals? So that was my next thing. Is I
Oh
felt like they
yeah.
weren't going that fast. I do think some more like dirt and pieces coming off the ostrich, the actual ship would be great to show that he lifted off. But I wanted to make it feel like these animals are really struggling to keep up and running behind him and super excited. I do think their gestures could be changed a little bit, so definitely watch the video on character posing. These feel very realistic, but they stiffen up, and so try to really, lean into those gestures. Even if you're doing realism, like these are drawn a little bit more real, even though they're kind of the woodcut style. You can still really play with that gesture. The next thing is just adding visual interest to the background. Now that I opened up the composition a little bit, so add some clouds.
Now, why did you go for those long, wispy clouds?
I didn't want because the composition is so long. I needed something to balance out the shapes a little bit. I originally had some smaller vertical ones, but they started to call attention to themselves. And again, I want to keep those things in the background.
Mm-hmm. Now you say I'm making you qualify your words. You say balance out, but if they're long, doesn't that if the image is long and the horizontal line is really long and everything is really long, the plane is horizontal, wouldn't those? By the way, I love your clouds, so I'm not
No,
trying to get you to
I
change them. But
totally.
when you say balance out by adding more long, why is that?
Well, let's add some smaller ones. I can transform these if you want. We can play. It's a valid point. That's for sure.
I mean, I know what I would say. I know my answer to that.
What's your answer? Do you have a better
My
answer?
answer is that they help show the speed.
Help show the speed, exactly.
You know, they
Long
with
cloud.
them longer like that. It's more leading lines that are going along with the action.
I like that. It's good as any. I just did them honestly because they felt right.
Uh-huh.
But do you like excuse me? Do you like the long or the short?
I like them longer.
Yeah, I think I do too.
And the other thing is when you get big open spaces like that, often you get wind, and when you get wind, you get longer clouds like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a great thing to think about while you're doing it, and maybe draw some more clouds like I was just doing, and see which one you like.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is since we basically have a underlying gesture now of the plane swooping up in that direction. Whoops, that's not a brush. Swooping up in this direction, and if you notice the angle of the head of the ostrich, it kind of goes counter to that, and so I thought maybe I could lean him into that shape, and that's a subtle change too.
Oh,
It's
so
just a
he's
gesture
trying to
change.
help it. He's gesturing it to go up.
Right, he's looking up because he just wants that thing to be high in the sky, right? And that shows you just how subtle that is. But I tend to like that gesture better because it looks expectant. Again, going back to keywords, it looks more expectant, whereas this just looks like he's like kind of used to this sensation. This looks like he's really hoping it goes up.
Yeah. There's subtle changes, but this is a very subtle illustration. And when
It's
you're
so
dealing
good.
with when you're dealing with a really simple illustration, every little choice you make matters.
Yeah, I mean they're small. This little stuff is, but it makes a big difference. You know, the slight little decisions, and we could make this little change to all these animals and really bump up the sense of urgency here.
Yeah.
But fantastic illustration. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so
Awesome.
well done. Again, I think this is pro level quality drawing and painting, and I could definitely see this being published.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's great. Okay, so that's it for tonight. So who are our winners?
Our winners are.
Drum roll.
You got to do the drum roll this
Insert drum roll here. I'm going to get a sound effect.
time. Joshua, Naders,
Yay!
and Shinji. Those are the three.
Yay.
Great work, you guys.
So that's
Fantastic options to choose from this month. And I get to give. Do you want to add anything else, Will, before I talk about the next?
No, that's what I was going to say. Is when what's our next prompt and when is it due? Because we have a little snafu with the due date this time.
Oh, you're gonna have to ask Aaron. Aaron, do you know when it's due? I don't know.
Yeah, Aaron, when is it due? I know he's lurking in here, or was. He's probably typing right now. But why don't you go ahead and give the prompt for next time, and then
Okay. So the prompt is for third Thursday for November. It is going to be a book cover of Edgar Allan Poe short stories. So this is going to be a little bit different. It's a book cover job. It's not a narrative illustration. I mean, there's narrative in it, obviously. The rules are it's for a grouping of his stories. You do need to leave place for type. You don't have to put the type in there if you're not comfortable doing that. Don't ruin a good illustration with bad type.
right.
But it's a chance to play around with that. It needs to be vertical, and all this stuff is written on the page that Aaron's going to post. But I'm just kind of going through it. So it needs to be vertical. Like most 99% of book covers are probably going to be in a vertical format.
And we choose based on if you followed the assignment. So make sure that you read that.
Oh yeah, if it doesn't follow the assignment, it can't win. It can still be a cool illustration, but nothing drives me more crazy as a teacher than giving an assignment and then it doesn't come back being the assignment. So it's a book cover. It's Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Now the only thing that won't win, even if all that stuff is correct, is just a straight portrait of Edgar Allan Poe. This needs to have some kind of concept, and so you can look through his library of stories that he's written. He's written a ton of them. You can use that as a prompt. Now, it doesn't mean you can't draw his face or draw his likeness in there. It just needs to be creatively done. Definitely Google illustrations on Edgar Allan Poe because there's a bunch of them that have him like being made out of birds. And so you just got to watch out for something that's been done a bunch. And like I said, read some of the stories and maybe try to bring that in there and give us a new take on Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And maybe some of his narrative. So it should be a blast.
Okay, so this one is going to be due a week early, and the reason for that is I realized now why we changed it. We're going to be out of town at the CTN conference, the Creative Talent Network conference in LA, and so we won't be here to critique on the third Thursday. The following week is Thanksgiving, so we've got to do it on the 12th of November. But the good news is, since this third Thursday came early because the first was a Thursday and it's the 15th, you still have a month. So it works out.
Yeah.
Okay. So great prompt. And this is going to be another great prompt, great artwork for tonight. And thanks a lot for participating, everybody. It really is a pleasure for us to do this. We really have a lot of fun with it. And do you have anything else?
Yeah, keep them coming and post stuff to the forum. I know people are getting a lot out of posting to the forums and getting draw overs and paint overs and a lot of feedback.
Awesome. Okay, you guys, until next time.
Good night.
Good night.